Hey, it's Craig, and welcome to another tech classroom. Today, I wanted to talk about Excel or working with spreadsheets and how they can actually be very useful and for gathering information. And also, Excel is very good at doing calculations. And what I wanted to take a practical example today, keeping it simple and yet diving right into Excel, you can see how quickly it can become a useful tool in your tool set. So let's get started. I wanted to take the case in point of, let's say you're shopping for another computer. And so you have to be looking online for different things to assemble for your computer system. You can see on the screen there, I've got my home set up since COVID. Working from home has been an essential part of what our reality is these days. And so I came up with this assemblage. It recently updated my home setup. You'll see that it's got a few different components, and I'll just use that as to illustrate the point today. If I were to grab a pen tool here, first of all, the heart or the brains, you might say, is what my laptop here in the center. Use the laptop because it's a small footprint, but it also enables me to have two screens. You'll see I've got the second screen over here. The laptop screen is just a 15-inch screen, and it's nice, but I like to work on a bigger screen. This happens to be a 27-inch screen, but a 24-inch screen is also quite nice. This one happens to be a 27. So I've got the laptop connected together with an external monitor. That gives me two screens to work with. I can put things on either side. It helps eliminate a lot of the paper printing out stuff because you can refer on one screen and put information in on the other screen. But you can see I've got the laptop in an external mode kind of a setup here. It's sitting on top of the stand here, so it's elevating it, and that's pushing it back further away from me. That's what we refer to as ergonomics, so that your posture is good. You're not slouched over. You don't have your neck in an awkward position and end up spending a lot of time at the chiropractor's office. So the laptop serves as the computer, but also serves as the second screen. The stand I've got pushes it up and back away from me, but that means it's hard to type on that keyboard. So I've got a keyboard here that I can easily type onto, and I've got my mouse down here. It makes it just easier to navigate everything on the computer to have a mouse. I mean, it does have a trackpad, obviously, but trackpads are good when you're literally traveling, this is sitting on your lap and you can't have a mouse. But whenever you can have a mouse, it's always good to have a mouse. So with that said, let's go ahead and use Excel to go ahead and create a shopping list of how you could put a system, something like that together for yourself. In any case, you're going to learn a little bit about Excel as we do that process. So over in Excel on the right-hand side, you can see that Excel is set up into columns where they're lettered. You can see Excel set up into columns where they're lettered, A, B, C, D, and so on, and into rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the numerical format like that. So it creates a combination of the column and the row together, puts it into a cell. So this cell here happens to be B4. You're going to see in just a little bit how we do a basic formula. We can reference a cell by its identification like that. But for starters, let's just go ahead and create a list of things that we want to get. So I'm going to just click on a cell here. I'm going to type a word. I'm just going to make a quick shopping list of things that if I were to look on Amazon, these are the things I want to look for. I'm going to look for a laptop. I'm going to look for a monitor, a keyboard, a mouse, and a stand. All right, so what I'm just doing there is just typing in each of those cells. As I hit enter, it just jumps to the cell below, and I just keep typing. The columns up here, you can see if I want to adjust the column width, I just grab it by that edge, and I can find a width that's going to work well. So I can set the width that I like. Now, the next thing that I'll do is let's jump over to Amazon. And I'm going to set the screen up so it's on the left side and the right side. So let me adjust my screen here so this is on the left. So did some shopping earlier and found a few ones already that I could have an entire lesson on just shopping for computers. Today's lesson is really on Excel. So let's just say I found the ones that I'm interested in. I'm going to go ahead and over here, now I can type in column B, perhaps I could type in the description. So this is an Asus VideoBook 15. And again, that text now went farther than this column is initially showing. So I can just take that column and bring it over here wider. And I know maybe I want to put in a couple more bits of information. Like for instance, this one has 16 gigabytes of RAM, and it also has a 512 gigabyte drive. Just a quick thought about computers these days. You can get computers cheap. This is actually a quite good, very good price, but you can get cheaper than that. But I would also just a word of caution: you can get computers that have, let's say, 4 gigabytes or 8 gigabytes of RAM. 4 gigabytes would just be terrible. 8 gigabytes would be tolerable. 16 is definitely better. I'll have a different lesson on talking about all those points in a different video. The 512 hard drive is a good. You can get obviously smaller. Stay away from the 128s. You could do a 256, would be tolerable. A 512 or bigger is definitely a better choice. So there's my laptop selection. Over here, I can type in the price. It's going on Amazon right now, $569.99, and then I can keep going in my shopping list here. So let's go to the monitor. So I'm going to pick a different tab here. I like the Scepter monitors. I'm gonna show you that. I've gotten the Scepter 24 several times. Used it for my work. So this is a Scepter 24-inch. The Scepter 27-inch is also quite nice. This one's at an excellent price though. It's only $99.97. Hard to beat that. $100 for a really nice monitor. Let's look at a keyboard again. Next, I should say. So the one I like here, I'll show you the one I like to use. Have it typing on it right now is a Perix, and it's a compact. So it doesn't take much space on the desk, but it does have a keypad, numeric keypad for those that like numeric keypads. It's also wired. You can do wireless keyboards, but it just means managing batteries and wireless connections and so forth. So for me, a wired keyboard, since this keyboard's not moving around on the table, just might as well do a wire. Just keeps things very simple. Now a mouse, on the other hand, if I jump back to my mouse, a mouse is nice to have a wireless mouse. This happens to be a Logitech M170, and it is wireless. Again, you do have to deal with the battery and the Bluetooth, and it's not Bluetooth, but it's a wireless connection. But it's worth it, a little bit of extra setup, so that you don't have to struggle with the wire on the table as you move your mouse around. So this one's hard to beat price of $9.99. And then finally the stand. So this is an example of that stand this isn't the exact model that I have right now, but they were out of stock. So this is another one that looks like it's a nice price. Got the where you can elevate it to whatever height you want. And you can see this ergonomic design that I'm talking about. If you elevate your laptop, to see how the screen is directly across from her eyes. And that way her neck is not tilted down. She's not in this uncomfortable position, slouched over, just causing all kinds of health issues if you do long periods of time working in a computer. All right, so that's why it's nice to have a stand if you have a laptop. And you can see this is a good example. So this one, I'm going to come over here and just type it in. It's a design LS10. Looks like it got good reviews. And so the price is $19.99. Now, do you see how basically seamless? We're just working in Excel. We're just typing in information. And how easy it is. Again, I can adjust these columns however makes most sense. Now, these are all be nicer to see those formatted with the dollar sign. So in Excel, you can just highlight cells. I'm just dragging over these cells here, so I picked all 5. You can see if I pick the dollar sign symbol up here, it's going to add the accounting number format, and that will go ahead and throw the dollar sign in front. Now, you'll see the accounting format actually throws the dollar sign all the way along the left edge of the cell. And that's okay. But if this cell gets wider, you can see there'll be a bigger gap there. You can also, there's another format that uses the dollar sign, and I like the shortcut. It's Control-Shift dollar sign. This is on a Windows PC. The Mac would be a different shortcut. You could look it up. But on Windows, you do Control-Shift dollar sign, and that will bring the dollar signs in nice and tight. That's actually the way that I prefer. Okay, so now the next question is, how much does this cost altogether? Well, One of the nice things you can do in Excel is if you highlight a bunch of cells like this, I'm just dragging my mouse over them so that all of them are selected. If you drop your eyes down to the bottom of the screen, you can see that cell is telling me that it's counted 5 items and the sum of those items is $721. Not bad. But you see that little tip right there just lets you drag your mouse and see how much some things put together the sum of those things would be. Now, if you wanted those things total on the screen as to fill in that cell here, what you can do is highlight the cells that you're interested in and click the auto sum tool, and you can see the shortcut on the screen is telling me that there is a shortcut. It's nice to know. It's Alt and equals. But if I click that auto sum, it's just going to go ahead and throw that number as a formula at the bottom of that collection of numbers. And then I can go ahead and format that perhaps as bold, and in this I'll put total and make that bold. But again, I'm just showing you how easy it is just to be working in Excel with some very basic functions. Now, let's come back and throw a couple of, that's just some basics for Excel. Let's go through in a couple intermediate kinds of things. For those of you that already know Excel, let me show you a couple more things that might take it to the next notch higher. First of all is, now, you're probably not just going to shop for a larger purchase like this and just buy it in the same day. You're going to want to ponder it. You're going to maybe look for different options, a laptop, A, B, and C options, and so forth. So you might save this. You could go ahead and save this spreadsheet and come back to it later, of course. How do you get back to those Amazon pages in the future when you want to look at them again? Well, it'd be good to have a hyperlink. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to my Amazon tabs here. I'm going to grab this text and copy it to the clipboard. I'm going to come over here and select this cell here, and I'm going to insert a hyperlink. Now you could do that through the menus up here, but I like the shortcut Control K. And I imagine that it would be Command K on a Mac. Now, a hyperlink is going to say, well, hang on a sec. Let me back out of this. If I were to just come down here and paste the hyperlink, you're going to see why I just don't paste the hyperlink as a big long string of letters, because look how much space that takes, and it really doesn't help us to see all that information. So I'm going to hit the delete key, get rid of that. So what I'm going to do is take this text here and change it into a hyperlink. So I'm going to select the cell. I'm going to press Control K, and then I'm going to paste that same hyperlink in the address box. So it's the text to display at the top says laptop, but the address it will go to is when you click on it. So I'm going to click OK, and it changes to the blue hyperlink. And that way I can click on this link in the future. And I could just do the same thing for the monitor. Come back over here, Control K, find the keyboard, grab the link, copy to the clipboard. That's Control C on Windows. Come over here, Control K, and paste. And I won't do all the links, but I think you get the sense of the pattern. Now, it might be good to go ahead and label these columns here. So I'm going to say this is the link, this is the description. And by the way, the tab key, or you can use the tab key or the arrow keys to go left and right. I mean, so if I press tab, it'll just jump to the next cell across. And so this is the price. And perhaps since those are titles, I'm going to go ahead and make those bold. Now, the next thing is this the actual true price? Well, not exactly, because what did we forget? Well, we forgot to add the tax. So I'm going to add a new column for tax. And then so we'll calculate the tax in this column here, and over here will be the extended price, which is inclusive of the tax. And perhaps I want to select those three cells and do center justified so it looks a little bit nicer. And if I wanted to, I could even highlight this whole row, a group of cells, and come up into the shading and perhaps add a little bit of shading just so it stands out as the header. So let's go ahead now and introduce a formula, because to do the tax, we have to do a very simple calculation. We take the price and we times it by whatever your tax rate is. I'm in New York, so it's 8 7/8. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a formula. Every formula in Excel starts with the equal sign. So if I type the equal sign, that's going to start my formula. The next thing for a formula in Excel is to tell it, what am I going to do next? I add, multiply, subtract, divide. What do I want to do? Well, first of all, I have to tell it the base number that I'm going to work with in this formula. So it's right here is C2, and I could type in C2. But instead of typing in letters and numbers for cell references, I'm just going to click on the cell that I'm interested in, and it's just going to type the cell reference for me, equal to C2. Now, what do I do with that cell C2? I'm going to multiply, so I'm going to use the asterisk as the multiplication reference, and then I'm going to type in the percent of my tax rate. So in New York, as I said, 8 7/8. So I'm going to put that into a decimal format, which would be 0.08875. And that's our tax rate in New York. So the formula that I put together here is equal to C2, that's this cell here, times this rate. And if I hit enter, it's going to calculate the tax on that laptop would be $50.59. Now I would say, well, I got to do that same formula all the way down. So you might think initially, let's just put equal to, and then click on this cell, and then times, and do the same number again. But then you think, well, if I had a really long list of things to do, if this is only 5 items, if this went way down, that would just be way too much work. So, and you're right, it is way too much work. So what you notice here on the screen is whatever cell you're in, there's down in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little tiny square. And that square is a handle that if you grab onto that square, you can then drag from that square downward. And what it will do, I'm going to take it downward like this, let it go. And what it's going to do is it's going to replicate whatever's in this cell here downward. But if it's a formula, it's going to tell, Excel's smart enough to realize that if the formula is moving down, if this was the formula started off as a C3, if it moves down, it's going to change to C4. And if it keeps on moving down, it's going to keep changing it. That row is going to increment as it goes down. So Excel's smart enough to realize that. So that's a very helpful thing to do. Use that fill handle and drag it down. Now, so I've got the tax figured here. One more last thing to calculate here is the extended price. So I have to create another formula. How do you start a formula? Equal sign. Then you're going to say, what am I going to create the formula from? Well, I'm going to click on this cell here to have it type in for me C2. And then I'm going to use the plus operator. So we have an addition going on here. I'm going to click on the next cell, and you can see, and it's even color coding it for me here. I've got the blue and the red. So you can see that also in the formula, which is very useful to see visually what's happening as you build this formula. So C2 plus D2, I hit enter, and it's going to calculate the extended price. Finally, the same tip that we just had used, which is grab this lower right-hand fill handle, drag it down, and that will go ahead and create all the extended prices for me. And it'd be nice to take this price here and bring it across. Remember, this was a formula, an automatic sum of what's happening above it. So there's that fill handle again, but this time instead of taking the fill and going downwards, I'm going to take the fill and I'm going to go to the right once and twice and let it go. And it's going to take that same formula and automatically adjust it as it goes across. So it's taking the addition of the sum of what's above it. So here's my grand total, and perhaps I can add some highlight to that. That's the final number that I'm looking at if I wanted to go ahead with this purchase. But there you go. We took an actual example of something that you could do to how quickly it was to gather the information, to record it in Excel, and to manipulate some very basic functions so that you could do some calculations. And I hope that illustrates just the power of Excel and the simplicity of Excel. And perhaps that gave you some ideas that you could work with. If it's not computer shopping, it's something else that you'd be gathering information and doing some basic calculations. I hope that helped you, and I'm glad that you joined me today in Craig's classroom.